Paul's letter to the Thessalonians, when heard through ancient Hebrew ears, breathes in the language of covenant life, embodied faith, and clan loyalty under Yahweh's anointed king. He does not begin with abstractions, but with the warmth of kinship. The believers are not an audience or members, but a clan bound together under Yahweh. He thanks Elohim for their emunah, faith not as an inner concept, but as a steadfast walk, a life planted on the firm soil of trust. Their ahava is not sentiment, but the labor of the hands, carrying burdens for one another. Their tikva, hope, is not wishful thinking, but a rope stretched forward, fastening them to Yeshua's return. Paul describes the Besorah, good news, not as an idea, but as something that came with power, with ruach, and with full weight. In Hebrew imagery, ruach is breath, wind, the life force of Yahweh. To receive the word in ruach means it entered like breath-filling lungs, animating their walk. His phrase, full assurance, means the word was not slippery or hollow, but heavy, like a stone that cannot be moved. Their reception of the word was marked by affliction, a term rooted in the imagery of being pressed, crushed, or trampled. Yet, paradoxically, this pressing birthed joy of ruach, the kind of deep gladness that erupts even while under weight, like a spring bubbling up from the earth. Paul recalls how they turned from idols, images of wood and stone, to serve the living Elohim. In Hebrew thought, idols are not simply false gods, but breathless nothings, without ruach, without the capacity to give life. To turn from them is to step out of shadow into light, from silence into the voice of Yahweh. He then speaks of his own conduct among them. He was not like a flatterer, whose words are smooth, but without grip. In Hebrew, flattery is speech that slides like oil, without weight. Nor did he wear a beged, a cloak of greed. The word beged carries the sense of betrayal, like a garment that covers treachery underneath. Instead, Paul likens his care to that of a nursing mother, tenderly feeding her child, and also to a father guiding his sons, urging them to walk worthy of Elohim. The imagery of walking is central. For the Hebrews, righteousness was not an abstract standing, but a path to be guarded. To walk worthy is to keep to the covenant trail, avoiding detours into crookedness. Paul rejoices that the Thessalonians received his word not as the speech of men, but as the voice of Elohim, which works like a living seed planted in soil. This word grows, taking root in their lives, even under persecution. He compares their suffering to that of the Judean assemblies, drawing them into the same story. The path of covenant faithfulness always meets resistance. When Paul was torn away from them, he uses imagery of being orphaned, cut off from the face of loved ones. His longing is not professional concern, but the ache of family separation. Satan, the adversary, hindered him, a Hebrew picture of an opponent blocking the road, cutting across the path to trip the traveler. Yet Paul assures them that they are his crown of joy, not a golden ornament, but the victory wreath of a runner finishing the race, the sign of honor before Yahweh. When he could no longer endure the separation, he sent Timothy to strengthen and encourage them. These are building terms. To strengthen is to shore up a structure, placing beams to hold firm against storms. Encouragement is to breathe courage into weary lungs. Paul reminds them that suffering is part of the appointed path, not a detour. The word appointed is drawn from imagery of laying down a stone, fixing it in place. It is set. He longs to see them again, to supply what is lacking in their emunah. In Hebrew thought, emunah is like a tent structure. If a pole is weak or missing, the whole tent sags. Paul desires to set the poles upright, so the tent of their faith will stand firm. The prayer that follows is full of Hebrew weight. He asks that Yahweh cause their love to overflow, a picture of a spring pouring water beyond its banks, not a trickle of sentiment. He prays their hearts would be established blameless, a construction term again, as if Yahweh himself were placing their inner framework on solid foundation stones so they can stand unshaken at the coming of Yeshua. Paul turns to exhortations to walk and please Elohim more and more. Again, the path imagery dominates. To walk in Torah ways is to move forward, step by step, guarding the trail Yahweh set. He calls them to holiness, which in Hebrew is kadosh, set apart, marked off like a boundary stone that separates one field from another. Their bodies are not to be ruled by uncontrolled desire, but are vessels meant for honor, like sacred instruments in a tent of meeting. Brotherly love, ahavat achim, is treated as the natural outflow of being taught by Yahweh. He urges them to live quietly, work with their hands, and walk properly before outsiders. Work is not drudgery, but covenantal faithfulness, as each hand's labor becomes a testimony of order, discipline, and provision. Paul then comforts them regarding those who have fallen asleep. In Hebrew imagery, death is not the end, but a sleep from which Yahweh awakens. The trumpet, the shout, the descent of Yeshua, all are drawn from Sinai and covenant theophanies, the mountain shaking, the shofar blast, Yahweh descending to meet his people. The images of Yeshua returning as a victorious king and the clan being gathered to meet him, not to vanish away, but to escort him in honor. The day of Yahweh is likened to a thief in the night, a sudden disruption. For Hebrews, night is the time of vulnerability, when watchfulness is required. To be children of light is to stay awake, sober, girded, not stumbling in darkness. Faith, love, and hope become armor. A breastplate to protect the chest, a helmet to guard the head. These are not concepts, but covenant tools for survival. Paul closes with instructions that remain deeply clan-oriented. Respect those who labor among you. Encourage the faint-hearted. Uphold the weak. Pursue shalom with all. The imagery is of shepherding, of a flock cared for in every condition. Joy, constant prayer, and thanksgiving are not optional moods, but rhythms of life. To quench the ruach would be to throw water on a fire burning within the tent, an act of extinguishing what Yahweh himself kindled. Finally, he calls on Yahweh to sanctify them wholly, body, soul, and spirit. In Hebrew imagery, this is not dissecting parts, but encompassing the whole person, flesh, breath, and life force. To be preserved blameless is to be guarded intact, like a treasure sealed until the day of unveiling. The entire letter, read with Hebrew eyes, is not abstract theology, but a living picture, a clan walking the covenant path, upheld by ruach breath, bound by cords of love, awaiting the return of their king.